thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. We're excited to have you with us for another Engaged Learning Forum. Thank you to Joe and everybody helping to get the text straightened out, which is definitely always have to rely on other people for. Looking forward to a time we can do these in person again so that we don't have to worry about Zoom or filtering ourselves through this technology. But very excited to have you here with us this morning. Excited you can join us to hear from Rachel and Elena and Amber and others this morning. Of course, want to recognize that this is a stressful moment for a lot of folks. Want to recognize that we're all kind of still waiting to see resolutions about the election and other things. And so grateful that you're able to take some time with us today. Looking forward to this being again, a celebration and a learning time where we can focus on something I think very positive for a while and some of the great work that's been done. So I think with that, we'll turn the time over to Rachel Patterkeen to introduce us and lead us through the rest of this morning's conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. Yes, as you'll see, there are three names listed on the slides, but as you're going to hear, our very collaborative work is done by a team of faculty, community partners, and students in the context of very long-term commitments. So our research on community impact is also collaborative, and the principal investigator for our research project, Danielle Wood, is currently with the Center for Civic Innovation and formerly was a colleague here at the CSC. She and I have worked with several student researchers over the past couple of years, including graduates Sarah Sun, Abby Korn, and Amber Grimmer. Amber will be speaking with us today, as well as current student researchers Cynthia Trujillo and Christina Ruiz, who I believe are going to be joining us or have. And Danielle will be available during the Q&A time for methodology questions. Many of us know each other, but not all, so I'd like to introduce my co-presenters. Elena Mangiani-Laura is an award-winning teaching professor who's constantly devising innovative ways to encourage students to think deeply about language learning and cultural empathy. An excellent example is the ePortfolio approach to flipped final assessment that she developed as an Ursula Williams Fellow with the Center for the Study of Languages and Cultures. She generously shared that model with us, which served as a template for many of the Spanish CBL classes as well as other languages. And Elena has presented on this pedagogy repeatedly, often with Alex Ambrose and as far away as Santiago, Chile. Amber Grimmer, who is a 2020 graduate, was our lead student researcher last year, an International Economics and Romance Languages graduate. She contributed perspectives informed by varied experiences at Notre Dame that included leadership in the Student Coalition for Immigration Advocacy, study abroad and/or research in 5 countries, thanks to making the most of summer and break opportunities, in addition to a semester in Chile. She was part of the inaugural CCLIP cohort for Puerto Rico and took CBL with Marisol Moreno. And if not for the pandemic, she would currently be a Fulbright English teaching assistant in Andorra. When Ellen and I are speaking, we should have a little bit of time at the end of our sessions for questions, but we'll ask any questions for Amber to be held to the very end. And I am Rachel Patterkeen. I have a joint appointment with the Center for Social Concerns and the Department of Romance Languages. As a teaching professor, I teach Spanish at the intermediate level, as well as a CBL class, and I direct our Spanish CBL program. Elena, there we go, okay. So 3 sections will comprise today's talk: an overview and framing of the Spanish community-based learning program at our 10-year mark that I will be doing, a case study of the newest CBL course, which actually is gearing up for its 4th iteration, taught by Elena, and a review of findings on the community impact research that we've been doing as reported by partners and analyzed by our community-based research or CBR team. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to start with a few numbers just for you to keep in mind as I spend the next few minutes framing how we do our work. As we'll see in detail in a few minutes, relationships are really key to the work that we do. And the foundational collaboration is between the Center for Social Concerns and the Department of Romance Languages and Literatures. The professional development made possible by the CSC, the mutual supportive programming and classes, and our shared work are essential to the way we have been able to grow our cohort to 6 CBL faculty, 3 key community partners, and our many students. It's also important to note other key Notre Dame partners that make our work richer: the College of Arts and Letters, the Institute for Latino Studies, and the Institute for Educational Initiatives. Before going into specifics about courses and partners, I would like to frame how we approach our work by sharing some portions of a draft of an invited chapter from an edited volume on social justice in second language teaching. The chapter is titled, "Together We Are Stronger: Social Justice Through Community Building." Community-based learning in second language pedagogy has been demonstrated through theory, models, and case studies to be effective across K-16 as a powerful means to move students along a continuum of transformation from cross-cultural awareness to critical knowledge and even activism. Key authors in that are Hellebrandt and Verona, 1999, and Hellebrandt, Aries, and Verona in 2003. And at the end of the slides, I do have the references listed. So if you're interested in doing some more reading on your own, that will be available. Our efforts here at Notre Dame suggest that this can be accomplished through what we are calling community generating pedagogy. In spring 2019, Stacy Johnson from Vanderbilt University presented for the Center for Study of Languages and Cultures on social justice in the language classroom, a call to action. In a conversation after her presentation between Stacy, Kevin Berry, and myself, Kevin posed the question if, in fact, what we're doing isn't community generating pedagogy. We agreed that it is and have been thinking in those terms since, strengthening the shift in our perspective of CBL from learning based in the community to a process of building community in classrooms and society. Building community requires robust collaborations, as is seen in the writings of Abbott and Lear, 2009, Bugle, 2013, Campano, Giso, and Welch, 2016, Grassi et al., 2018, Jorge, 2011, 2017, and Lear and Sanchez, 2013. And such collaborations are grounded in relationships. Community generating pedagogy prioritizes relationship within and beyond the classroom. In good relationships, we continually work through challenges, value each participant's perspective, diversity, and strengths, and occasionally recognize when we need to end a relationship. Abbott and Lear, 2009, Beer and Gotruba and Wells, 2011, Beckman, 2016, and Pigsa, 2016. Developing quality relationships takes time. Consequently, community partners value long-term commitments, as written about in Stoke and Tryon, 2009, and Lear and Sanchez, 2013. We want language students to develop accurate, nuanced communication to better understand cultural implications of what they hear, speak, read, and write, both to embrace and critique their own culture and that of the target language. As Ethel Jorge stated, language is a social practice inextricably linked to community and cultural contexts, end quote, and that, quote, appropriately and effectively executed community engaged language and intercultural education will continue to be essential in helping to build bridges among various sectors of our society, end quote, 2017. For second language CBL students to learn deeply, they must develop cultural and linguistic competence. At the same time, interacting with the community through personal interaction requires getting it right in settings where results matter. In addition, work in leadership, psychosocial development, education, even current social critique all discuss the importance of building rich, deep social connections, as written about in Blanchard and Miller, 2014, Feeney and Collins, 2015, Vandervoort, 2006, Grassi et al., 2018, Campiano, Giso, and Welch, 2016, and Brooks, 2019. In second language CBL, we focus on relationships and results, encouraging class-based learning communities as we build connections within local second language communities. Oops, there we go. In our Spanish CBL program, Jennifer Pigsa's 2016 Power Model, partnerships, objectives, working, evaluation, and reflection informs our thinking. We intentionally select and know our partners. We match their needs with our interests and our students' needs. Jointly, we define partnership objectives for both community and class, mindful to not privilege one over the other. And we collaborate throughout the process, including mid-semester check-ins, post-semester debriefings, to evaluate outcomes and reflect on results to improve subsequent iterations. We build community through attention to particulars. The classes and authentic second language communities we work with are comprised of individuals. We listen to their voices and stories. In creating curriculum, we are mindful of the knowledge, skills, and dispositions they have and those to be developed. We construct activities to develop empathy in our students, and we invite cross-group interaction. We get involved personally. Now, as I move into specific classes and partnerships, we'll see examples of how relationship happens in concrete contexts, how students learn about the issues, build friendships, empathy, and skills, listen and give voice, and learn to pay attention to who is telling the stories, as well as create opportunities for getting involved. La Casa is our longest partner. As with all our sites, we collaborate to meet partner and student objectives. Clear and regular communication starts well before the first class, continues as we work together throughout the semester, and as we evaluate and reflect on our work before the next round. By creating engagement that values each partner's expertise and desired outcomes, the relationship is able to evolve, deepen, and strengthen over time. Marisol Moreno is our pioneer professor. She has rotated through different topics and has been on La Casa's board since 2016. Her students work primarily with their youth programs, and she has written about both the power of CBL as well as the practicalities of creating courses and sustaining partnerships. She had stated that in combination, U.S. Latina literature and CBL have, quote, the power to transform minds and hearts, to awaken students' desire for social justice and to become agents of transformation, end quote. She has also attested to the profound impact of CBL as community-generating pedagogy, recognizing the value of having a single sustained partner over a decade and how that has influenced both herself, her students, and their continued engagement in the Latino community beyond the CBL class commitment. And she cited the ways that students will go to the palateria, to the taqueria, invest in the Latino community. She herself has been a part of the board since 2016. So there are many ways that that engagement extends beyond the end of the semester. Maria Coloma's students also work with La Casa, as do her Spanish CBL, and as her Spanish CBL colleagues do. Maria creates theoretical frameworks for her students by selecting materials that present multiple perspectives, and then she guides them to integrate their learning. In her class, Maria introduces students to historical and current readings, grounding their lived experience of CBL in academic content. One way the students do this combining or this integration in all of our classes is through reflective writing assignments. The quote that you see on the screen, Maria shared when she, Ellen, and I presented along with CBL students, CSC colleagues, and community partners at the Global Service Learning Summit 5 in 2018. And the student said, this is Maria's translation. Last week, Felix needed help with the students' children, and he told me that I was great with keeping the children entertained and teaching them. I felt proud because this is something I didn't know I was good at. And so we see here that this integration and reflection process helps students to recognize things about themselves that they hadn't understood or seen before. Our second partner, El Campito, we've been working with for 8 years. El Campito is a bilingual child development center that promotes educational success for children and social and economic success for their families in a diverse cultural setting. Tatiana Botero and Andrea Topesh Rios both work with El Campito. And let me point out again, Tatiana has been a board member with El Campito since last year. So this is another example of how the learning and the engagement that we do as professionals has gone beyond our classroom work. Tatiana's students do community-based research with bilingual families, providing them with books of their family immigration histories at semester's end. Through their community-based research project that is an IRB approved, has an IRB approved research protocol, they learn to listen carefully and to give voice to families celebrating their experiences. And because of the deep connections that are forged between students and families with their weekly meetings, the knowledge that the students gain truly is no longer faceless, but is understood both in head and heart. Andrea's students also work with El Campito, and they are working on developing their own language proficiencies while also helping to ensure that their child partners are kindergarten ready. By building friendships with the little ones through sharing stories and language, Notre Dame students help El Campito students to build literacy skills, advance language development, and be better prepared for the increasingly rigorous kindergarten curriculum, ensuring that these students from low-income Spanish-speaking families do not fall through the cracks. In the process, Notre Dame students are also building their own language and intercultural competence. Our most recent partner, Holy Cross School, began a two-way immersion program in 2017. Since then, 2 CBL classes support them with written translations, interpreting at parent nights, mentoring and reading with Spanish-speaking students to promote biliteracy and pride in their home culture. So Elena's Introduction to Translation Interpreting class, which she will speak about at great detail, and my class in children's literature. So since Ellen is going to talk a lot about her class, I just have one example of the work that she's done. One semester, the Holy Cross School had some parent nights, and so Ernest Morel was going to be speaking about making every child a super reader, and Elena's students went through and translated a rather dense, full of information presentation into Spanish so that the Spanish-speaking parents would have access to that, and her students could very quietly help them with understanding the presentation as it was being done without being obtrusive in the process. And then my students actually used this as a reading in my children's literature class. So it's a great example of how many times projects or research papers, et cetera, have been able to be used in, that have been created in one section or one class have been able to be used in another class. My children's lit class weekly reads culturally rich books with their amigos after school. And as represented on the slide, several of our CBL students have received state awards. The latest group was just announced, and in fact, tonight is going to be the award ceremony virtually via Zoom. Indiana's chapter of the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese have named for this year Renita Wilson, Therese Douglas, and Sarah Galbensky as outstanding college students of Spanish. And Victoria Whitmore was also recognized in the category for heritage speakers. This state-level award requires a minimum of 3.7 GPA, academic excellence in the major, and multiple areas of community involvement and or service. Since its inception in 2014, we've had 21 students recognized. So in my class, and Once Upon a Time, Children's Literature and Community Connections, a central idea is the importance of recognizing who tells a story, who is represented, and how. We incorporate 3 key perspectives: Chimamanda Adichie's The Danger of a Single Story, Rudine Sims Bishop's 1990 article on Windows and Mirrors, and Principles of Catholic Social Tradition, CST, such as human dignity and solidarity. When children read stories where they do not see themselves represented, they do not feel valued. Likewise, if we have a single story about any group, we do not really know them. My students apply these ideas in analyzing literature and when working after school with K through 8 amigos at Holy Cross School. In thinking about the interplay of CST principles and literatures, one of my students, Ellen Burke, wrote the following: if solidarity means that we understand that all people are part of one family, then it is important to recognize the diverse range of stories that family has to share. The narratives we tell change the way we think about the world. When we tell stories that incorporate authentic voices about the lived human experience of being different, we help create a world vision that more precisely represents actual people's lives. So another, just an example of the kind of student that we like to have in CBL, Spanish CBL, Katie Eilert represents that type of engagement that we're encouraging, students who keep coming back. She did CBL at all levels and while abroad, and she also was one of the state award recipients her senior year. So I've given an overview of the courses, the faculty, the kinds of work that we're doing. Where do we go from here? We will continue to build on our good work to benefit students, faculty, and community partners. Moving forward, we will consider new course topics to address community needs and faculty interests as we look at the signs of the times. And we will do additional work to coordinate sequential learning for students within a CBL track. Finally, I'll stop with it there. So I believe, let's see, how are we doing on time? I've maybe gone probably full time for myself. So I'm going to turn things over to Elena. And if you have some questions, please jot them down and we can take them at the end.
Since we are doing things a little differently, I have to stop the sharing of the screen for a moment, and now I'll jump in. And I apologize for earlier that I wasn't muted, but I didn't dare touch the screen because I didn't want to interrupt Rachel's flow. All right. Thank you so much for letting me talk about this class, which, not surprising, is something from which I learned as much as I taught in that class. In talking to Rachel and Danielle Wood about what I might present, sort of the highlights of the class, I realized that a big part of preparing was overcoming the resistance to community-based learning. So I did take advantage of the CSC's engaged, the Engaged Faculty Institute. It's gone through many different namings, but that's the one I remember. And I remember thinking, meeting the community partners and being exposed again and again to the pedagogy and thinking, wow, this is really amazing. Too bad I can't do it. And why didn't I think I could do it? Well, I would have had to give up some control and redo things, and it felt like a lot of work. And but the more I thought about it, and the more I talked to colleagues who had then been through the Institute and reflected on parts that I might already have had around the house, I realized that community-based learning was really a sort of a homecoming, and then followed by a long process of preparation. What do I mean by that? I mean that we had some pieces of community-based learning that we had to sort of put together and see how it fit, and then create a vision for it. Prior to Rachel's coming to Notre Dame, Kevin Berry had put together a learning community on reflection as pedagogy, which was really exciting. So I already had started incorporating some of that into our courses. And we had some service work, especially through some of the work that Isabel Jacob had done, that Maria Coloma with Cash. And so I thought about these pieces and said, well, since some of it's done already, let's start putting that together. And as I did, I realized that I had some places where I had to undo previous suppositions. And I've listed some of those here in the PowerPoint. So I had these ideas about service work, me and the students. We're here to help. Here's what we can offer. Hooray for us. And I had to undo those things and take the pieces and build something else under the conceptual framework of community-based learning. We're here to help. We're here to learn. And a real recognition of our community partners as co-educators. Instead of, here's what we can offer, tell us how we might help. We're going to follow you, talk together about what your needs might be, and how we might be able to help. Here are our needs. Here's how you can help us. That's largely the result of the work of Rachel and Connie and Annie, who vetted partners, prepared them, prepared us, made sure that we understood sort of what we were doing, and did periodic checks to make sure we were still on the right path. And instead of hooray for us, we're disruptive. Thank you for letting us be a part of this. That was really clear when we were putting together a video for Holy Cross the first year. They asked us to make videos showing a day in the life of a typical dual immersion student at Holy Cross, and what dual immersion learning is and how it works. And so in setting up the shoots and doing the interviews with teachers and parents and things, we realized that we were a real disruptive force, and we're very thankful that they were so generous with us and giving us access and time and resources. The other undoing was the assessment piece. In the past, if we don't have an assessment for it, they shouldn't be responsible for it. Really? Because aren't I in charge of the classroom? Okay, we need new ways to capture and quantify what we're doing. And thanks to the fellowship with the CSLC and the Kingdom Center, through the Ursula Williams Fellowship, we were able to develop this ePortfolio assessment tool, which I'll show you in just a minute. I thought, geez, I'll lose so much. I'll lose control of my methodologies of the classroom. I'll lose some of the content because community-based learning takes time, and I'll lose instructional time. And the truth is, yes, I will. I'll lose all of those things. And I'll become a better teacher in the process. So I learned to focus on what my priorities were and make sure that those things were mastered, and some of the things that were less valuable than the work that we were doing with the community partner had to go. What we invest in it, what we and our partners invest in each other comes back as a return to our students and program, which is a way to avoid the cliche of we get more out of it than we put into it. And we get more benefit than what we lose in the process. Last thing, I'm nervous. It requires flexibility. And all I can say to that is flexibility is a valuable skill. So let me show you, I don't know what you're seeing exactly. I'm going to move the people out of the way. And I appreciate seeing some of your faces because I don't do well to a crowd of just names. Anyway, I had to let my students know up front that this would not be a typical language course, because half of the students who take that course are students who have had me for language courses that are based on a communicative approach to language teaching. So it does some typical things: deepen understanding and move towards greater precision, understand the fundamentals and competing theories of translation, of translating and interpreting, trying out various techniques. So it has a lot of the usual suspects, but it's more a linguistics course than a language course. And then but it's not a typical translation course. There is the community-based learning component. Normally, especially for beginners, we would translate from the target language into our native language, and we don't have the luxury of doing that. But then these other things, practice is real world with real impact. So they weren't just exercises that we were doing. These are products that people are going to use. So that's a big responsibility. And so not things that you can sort of do by the seat of your pants at the last minute. Not that that happens often, but occasionally. And the final thing, the traditional role of the translator and interpreter is modified. So under the normal code of ethics for translators and interpreters, we would want to be as invisible as possible. Whereas here, we allow for advocacy and integration of two communities. And so up front, we talked about how our class was different, it was shaped by the work with our community partners. All right. So let's see what you can see there. I just listed some, when I talk to people about the work with the community partner, the big question is always, well, how do you measure that? How do you measure that? Because that's, I think, one of the greatest fears. I won't be able to capture what my students are doing. Some of that stuff is touchy-feely or too abstract, and so I have no way of capturing and measuring that. Well, Rachel gave a wonderful framework in the beginning to show that there is a lot of research on the pedagogy, on the benefits, on ways to assess. So I've listed these things so that you can see how we do it in my class. There's a place to assess skills. There's a place to assess knowledge, and then there's a place through the e-portfolios developed with the Kingdom Center and CSLC to measure dispositions as well. So let me show you what some of that looks like. Oh, all right. Here we go. The student work speaks for itself. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the e-portfolios that I use for that assessment. I'll talk to you about what it is for just a minute before I do. The e-portfolio, which again was developed in partnership with the Kingdom Center and the CSLC, is a re-examination of the work done throughout the semester. I'll show you one so that you can see what it looks like as I explain it. And all right, let's see. I wonder, here we go. So it's a re-examination of the students' work. Sorry, it's taking me a moment here. There we go. A place where they gather all of their work that they've done over the course of the semester, their essays, their quizzes, additional materials and things. I guess it's going to be a little bit slow today. Let's see. There we go. So they gather all of their work together and then they examine it to see what of their work shows progress towards the stated learning goals in the beginning. And so I'll just give you an example of those learning goals and what some of that looks like. So one of our learning goals is professional awareness, understanding and appreciation for the professions of translation and interpreting, the skills and tools necessary and the difference between the two. That's the learning goal that I stated at the beginning of the semester. And then the students chose an artifact. In this case, the presentation that Rachel alluded to by Dr. Morell that we translated. And then they write a reflection explaining, defending why the artifact is evidence towards the learning goal. And we go down the list. This is their final exam, again, which was designed to take the same amount of time that they would have taken to gather their materials and cram and take a 2-hour exam. So there's a time commitment, but it's not more than they would have done with a traditional final exam. The final piece is a meta-reflection, so it's a reflection on all of the work that they've done over the course of the semester. So their homework, their conversations, the work with a community partner, so they become scholars of their own work and make new meaning out of that work in the meta-reflection. And they put it all together in this beautiful package. All right. One of the last pieces that I wanted to show you, something that was extremely helpful, was that we added space for an unexpected learning goal. So there's a whole lot of uncertainty when we go into community-based learning. And I realized early on that there were some things that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I invited the students to help me understand what they were getting out of it that I might not have seen on the front end. This particular student, and each learning goal is different for each person, which is really good feedback for me as well. This unexpected learning goal, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, is about discernment. And this student has decided that she'd like to be a linguistics minor because she found that she really enjoys translation. Other students found that confidence was an unexpected learning goal. Some students found that working in a professional atmosphere, how different it is to the traditional academic work they were doing within the bubble, was an unexpected learning goal. Many found that flexibility and teamwork were unexpected learning goals. For myself, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and go back to my presentation. For myself, I had my own unexpected outcomes, which I'd like to share with you. And that the first thing there refers to the unexpected learning goal. I learned that my original learning goals were incomplete. In addition to the unexpected learning goal that the students gave to me, I had to pivot real quick and add a few things towards the end. At first, I didn't have sort of standards or protocols for dealing with our community partner, and I included that in the end because I realized that was something important that they got out of it. The other unexpected outcomes, am I really a type Z personality? I discovered that even I, who tends to be pretty flexible about time, was challenged by the need to pivot quickly and accommodate schedules and to be flexible. Couple last things here. There's no motivation without connection with the community partner. Claire Roach is an inspiration. In many of the e-portfolios, they put her picture and cited her framing of our work with Holy Cross as a fundamental learning outcome that they found to be very valuable. And they would not have been able to do the work without some kind of connection with the community partner. We did visit, we did have conversations, and that was important. We need a fun, creative project for the optimal performance overall. So translation work can be pretty dreary sometimes, pretty boring. We sometimes argue about a single word in a page for 10 minutes. So we had video projects and other things. We needed that in order for the semester to be fruitful. Last quick thing. At the ATA conference in 2019 in October, when we could still travel, I went to California to talk to other people in the field. Community translation is an emerging field, and Notre Dame is at the forefront. So the work that our students are doing is going to inform the way community translation takes shape in the future. And finally, this is no news to anybody. I work with a group of CSC rock stars. Without them, this would not have been possible. And I'm grateful for the support and the expertise of my colleagues. And I'll turn it back over to Rachel.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Elena. I'm going to turn it right over to Amber. Just one quick comment, Amber. We didn't set up the annotation feature ahead of time, so I can't give you the little visual cue. So I will either send you a quick chat or a 5 sign in case I'm on your screen when you're at the 5-minute mark. But so far we've been doing fine on time. So let's turn it over to Amber.
Oh, it's not letting me share the screen.
Okay. Elena, can you set it up so that Amber can control your screen again, please? Thanks. Elena, you're muted.
Amber should have control of the screen now.
Okay, there we go. All right, awesome. Okay, hello, and thank you so much for this opportunity to be speaking with you all today about a really important piece of the community-based learning program, which is like evaluating the program, and specifically from the perspective of the partner organizations. So for a quick overview, first I'm going to talk about how we attain this information that today's presentation is based off of. Then 6 important themes that I picked up on through analyzing the interviews with our community partners. And then finally, some feedback and suggestions provided by the partner organizations. So first for the methodology, the scope of this presentation is just the feedback from the partner organizations. We've also conducted interviews with students and faculty, but that's like a separate piece of the puzzle. So for this project, we used an outcome harvesting approach. If you have any questions about that methodology, you can ask Danielle more about that. But we were looking at 5 key areas of outcome. So 3 of those have to do with the student and the community, which is the educational outcomes, personal development outcomes, and social capital. And then also we are looking at organizational and programmatic outcomes. And I will be focusing on the student and community outcomes. And so specifically for this presentation, I'm looking at the strongest examples of themes from these broader categories based on the number of instances that they were discussed in our interviews and what I seem to me to be the most important things. So there are more themes outside of what I will be discussing, but these are the ones that I think are most pertinent. Okay, so number 1 is cultural pride and intergenerational connection. So we have 29 instances of cultural pride and about 13 of intergenerational connection, which was one of the greatest number of instances for any theme. For a definition of that, cultural pride we defined as students feeling confident and comfortable with their heritage, language, and community, and intergenerational connection being the connection between students and parents or grandparents. This is related to cultural pride in that they mutually contribute to each other, but it's specifically focusing on those generational relationships. So for examples of what partners had to say about those themes, so this first one refers to the Immigration and Memory book project. It was an opportunity from multiple generations within a family to connect on a deeper level and share aspects of their life that they haven't had the platform or opportunity to do so before. Next. Here we go. We also have, they learn to be proud of their family history and be comfortable talking about it. As we can see, learning about family history and placing value on it in an educational setting helps to cement the cultural pride for the El Campito students. Next, someone said, you get a fourth generation child hearing a story from a grandparent about their family and the value of diversity. That is something you should be proud of, especially in the climate of the last couple of years. Immigration isn't something people always are discussing. So this person is saying, rather than feeling like immigration should be a taboo subject, it is memorialized through the book project, which we see with this group, and helps them to value diversity. Beyond cultural pride, it also can generate a family pride, which is what happens when the students are given the opportunity to learn about and connect with their families in a new way beyond what they're doing on a daily basis. And then finally, it's good for our kids to feel that their first language is valued, referring to Spanish. So to speak a language at home and then see an adult try to learn your language is very important. So more broadly, outside of the book project at El Campito, having Notre Dame students in all of our programs who come to like practice their Spanish skills and learn it, it instills a sense of cultural pride by demonstrating that the Spanish language is something that we value. And so therefore it helps to see why their at-home language should also be valued. And then finally, what we glean from this is that there are great examples of the intergenerational connection theme from El Campito. But when we discuss this theme with our partners at La Casa, even though there's a lot of opportunities for cultural pride through this student programming, there's less so for the intergenerational connection, so connecting students with their family history. And so that is an opportunity of something that we can expand there. The next important theme that we had a number of instances was literacy. So general, and then English and Spanish. So by this, I define it as like the opportunities, reading, so the opportunities to read books and have book access, and also improvements in literacy, both in Spanish and English. So the main focus of this would be the improvements in literacy, but it's also very important that students are just exposed to books or have time to read books with students, both in Spanish and English, because even if someone speaks Spanish at home, they might not have the opportunity to like read those Spanish books with people. So this is like very like essential in cementing the importance of literacy in younger students. So for this theme, we don't have any quantitative measures of their improvement in literacy, but anecdotally, we did see that the programs did have a positive impact on students' literacy and exposure to books. So it expanded the library. The project helped our pre-K students with the development of pre-literacy skills. Anecdotally, there were significant literacy gains. And as I mentioned before, they speak Spanish at home, but they don't have the academic language or know how to read, which our programs can provide them the opportunity to do so. Oh, and finally, CBL classes have helped our students recognize their linguistic skills as a superpower. So that related to what I said before about cultural pride, like by having Notre Dame students, who value the language, it helps to cement the importance of bilingualism and being proud of language skills. The next theme is educational and then other. So I grouped a number of smaller themes together for this presentation. So we're looking at educational outcomes, including communication skills, increased grades, individual attention, motivation in school, and opportunity. So most of those are pretty self-explanatory, but for individual attention, what I mean by that is one-on-one tutoring or mentor attention that is sometimes difficult to achieve in a traditional classroom setting when there's multiple students and one teacher. So that is an important thing that we picked up on regarding the tutoring program at La Casa. Examples. So at La Casa, they found that those who attended tutoring consistently showed better academic improvements than those who didn't. And then this quote is about individual intention. The consistent volunteers that could be there, so that way I can do the one-on-ones and work with the students to give them the attention they need besides just sit down and get your work done, that kind of stuff. I can't stress enough how important it was to have their consistent presence for the programs to function. So here we see that, and this is regarding La Casa de Amistad, like having volunteers also gives the opportunity for the people who work there to give more one-on-one attention, which is important for like addressing their homework needs. The after-school program places academics as something that's important and that should be held in high esteem with reading and math, balancing it with fun so they have something to look forward to. So this balance makes students more excited about learning. So observations is that there are actually fewer references to the educational outcomes than we were expecting, especially compared to like the cultural pride and things like that, which is surprising given that this is an educational program. We also noted that there was a lack of quantitative evidence for like improvement in grades, but that's something in the future that hopefully would be interesting to track. And then most of these instances of observations, it's important to know, were just them talking about how we are working on these rather than talking about how they improve the outcome. So we can see that there is like a lot of effort put into increasing educational opportunities, but it's difficult to quantify the improvement. Okay, so next is relationship development. We looked at this in both in the sense of relationships between the younger students at the partner organizations and Notre Dame students, but also individuals with their community or individuals with the Notre Dame community. So, and also having the opportunity to socialize and interact with someone who is different than you. So examples of this include the children look forward to Fridays and partnering up with their Notre Dame buddy and have cherished much needed one-on-one time. I remember this CBL student not just encouraging him, a younger student, but was truly interested in building a relationship. This changed the attitude of the student and was able to do his work. The CBL student was his friend. So here we see that the investment of Notre Dame students in the younger students' personal lives like contributes to the educational outcomes. And then this final quote is regarding the Sister Maura Brannick Clinic, which has one placement for a post-grad volunteer. They said the patients themselves love having the students. Oh, and there's also student volunteers. And the smiles they see when they walk in the door, it might be the only smile they get the whole day. So relationship development was also a significant outcome of the Notre Dame students working with young students. That is something that can be achieved like on a two-way street. It's not just the younger students who are benefiting, but also Notre Dame students. A new theme that we didn't expect to pick up on was what we called institutional approachability. So there are 13 different instances of this. I define institutional approachability as the level of comfort approaching both institutional resources and members of the institution. So why is this important? It's important because some people view institutions as, this person would say, as scary and aloof. But by connecting and forming these one-on-one relationships in the community, it added to that community and connection to Notre Dame to make it less scary and aloof. And I'll just read the last part of this. So some people, or to paraphrase, some people don't know much about Notre Dame despite it being such a significant presence in South Bend and the country. But having this bridge with the volunteers in the West Side, it cracks the door open a little, not just for kids, but their families. And that is a possible benefit. So this is a really important segue from institutional approachability to the next theme, which has to do with approaching higher education. When an institution like Notre Dame seems more approachable, it also makes pursuing a higher education seem more possible, which is very important for communities who might have a lower frequency of higher educational attendance. So this, and the theme that I'm referring to is sense of possibility. So that's the sense of possibility is defined as envisioning oneself as being able to overcome barriers, including going to college. So in the tutoring program or the other programs with Notre Dame students, it might have been the first time they had the conversation that college is an option for their child and something more realistic. For our youth, they get to see that going to college, being a college student, is accessible because they are continually interacting with college students, which is really important. When I first started, I would ask a lot of them what they wanted to do after high school, and they would just be like, oh, I don't know, just work. And then when I asked the first batch that started with the programs with Notre Dame student volunteers, many went to college. So that is the last of the themes I'm discussing. Just to sort of visualize it, here are the three main outcomes related to the students. We see, you can see here what the biggest instances of each theme are. And then something that we also picked up through coding all of these different interviews, there was a concept I often noted, but that wasn't necessarily captured by other categories, and that is the broader impacts beyond the people receiving the programs at a given organization. So I define this broader impacts or community justice theme as the externalities, whether direct or indirect, on broader communities impacted by organizations that partner with Spanish CBL. So an example of this would be intergenerational connection. Even though under social capital, that is an important theme like student outcome, it also impacts the other generations and the people in the families. Similarly, parental involvement in education, yes, that is something that impacts the students, but it also impacts the community at large because their families are more involved. And then finally, the participant motivation for justice. So this includes the students receiving the programs, like because of this program, do they want to go out in their community and do more? If so, then these programs don't just impact the people that we're working with, but also the community as a whole. So that's it on the outcomes. And here are just a couple short pieces of feedback and suggestions we received from the partner organizations. So for them, a consistency is super important and like a long-term commitment. They want to like improve the student schedule. So for example, they said that sometimes students would have to drop out once they realize the schedule. So putting that information at the beginning with very specific times they need to be available will be helpful to prevent that from happening in the future. Increased transportation opportunities. So luckily the CSC has vans they can use, but still if there was something more consistently planned that more students could come volunteer on a more regular basis, that would be helpful. Of course, because of the wonderful outcomes, more CBL courses would always be appreciated. And for Holy Cross, they said they wanted to incorporate their faith more. That is it, and I'll be happy to take any questions now that the presentation is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amber, and really a great job. I wanted to make just a couple of quick comments and then give Danielle a chance to talk a little bit about the methodology piece. Some of the challenges in terms of transportation and consistency with the students, I think, has more to do with volunteers, because sometimes the partners aren't necessarily distinguishing between the CBL students and volunteers. So when we're in classes, we always try to do that commitment piece, et cetera, up front. And then also just in terms of motivation for involvement, it goes beyond the students that are being served in the community partners, but includes the families as well as the faculty. So that participant motivation is even broader than what Amber alluded to. But overall, excellent. Thank you so much for your great presentation. Danielle, do you want to jump in and talk just a bit about the methodology, please? Danielle, if you're wanting to talk, you need to unmute.
Yeah, just to provide a little bit of context. The outcome harvesting is one of a suite of methods that are used in community development oriented fields. And they overlap each other somewhat and offer different things, but they include things like outcome mapping, ripple effect mapping, participatory impact pathways, appreciative inquiry, and then outcome harvesting is inside of those, process tracing. And these tend to be used where you're either implementing a new intervention or you're implementing an intervention in a new or unbounded context, where the full scope of what the full scope of the process is and the full scope of the impact isn't perfectly certain. So for that reason, you begin the methodology. So prior to bringing on the student researchers like Amber, this was scoped with kind of thinking about semi-structured interviews based on what are known outcomes in standard work, and then also drawing that from the literature, and then also some of the initial kind of conversations that Rachel's been having over the past number of years, so that it was framed as a semi-structured interview that allowed for the ability to integrate emergent themes, as Amber mentioned, but similar to what Elena was experiencing with individual student learning outcomes in her e-portfolio. And I just wanted to make sure that that was understood, that many of these things we were actually looking for to start with, because we expected them to be there. And this method is a verification process by basically getting enough folks to give feedback on whether or not the outcomes that we're expecting are actually showing up, and then what things are we missing in that same sort of emergent approach.
Thank you, Danielle. Ellen, maybe if you could unshare your screen, then we could all see I think there's enough space that all of us will show up. We have about 5 minutes left, which is not as much as we had hoped for Q&A, but I'm sure that we'd be willing to stay on after, but I want to also be very aware of people's time. So are there questions that you would like to ask? Anybody? And feel free just to unmute and jump in. Trying to put my screen aside, but where everybody is just so fried at the end of the semester, there's no bandwidth for questions.
I don't have a question, but I just want to make a comment. And first of all, it's great to see you all in the screen. My name is Jimena Alguin, and I work with the International Summer Service Learning Program. And it has been a great experience always to collaborate with Romance languages. And I feel that there is a great connection between the community-based learning program and our own programming at the center, and that's just like enriches the students' experience and students' learning. And it has been a great collaboration. And I'm speaking from the ISSLP, but like Felicia is here, and she can also speak from like their own experience from the SSLP and other programming at the center. So yeah, it's so great to see all this, and yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
I have
Felicia,
a question.
jump in, but I will follow up on Jimena, but I want to give Felicia a chance to say something first if she wants to.
Mostly just to reiterate, what Jimena said, but I think the formation students get in their CBL-C courses is just phenomenal. It helps them engage in service in a much richer way. They just have that, their engagement, I think, is at a level that's different than students who haven't taken the CBL-C courses. I wish there was a way to document that. But I am interested in, the assessment piece. I'm impressed to see the work that you guys have done and how we can build on that. So thanks. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Felicia. Yeah, I just want to say that it's a huge pleasure for me working with both Felicia and Jimena, because one of the things with students like Katie, like Amber did the C-CLIP rather than SSLP or ISSLP, but C-CLIP originated in the CSC. So that cross-pollination, that back and forth between the CSC programming and the CBL classes, when students have those multiple experiences, it just deepens for them the understanding of the CST principles, of the cultural competence, of the perspectives. And so they also become student experts within the class community and really help become co-educators as well. So I'm always inviting SSLP, ISSLP students to talk when we have our Spanish CBL info nights, and that's been really helpful to get that back and forth. So, and many of the students who have gotten the state awards at the Indiana, the AATSP awards, have been students that have done SSLP, ISSLP, the CSE seminars as well. So it's a great partnership on all kinds of levels. So thank you both for being here and for speaking up. Others?
And can I add that Amber was a poverty studies minor as well. So, and chose to sort of concentrate in thinking about her experiences through language and cultural immersion. So, this is just beautiful. And, if I may say, one of my first tasks coming to the Center for Social Concerns was being placed on, the search committee for what we wanted to create was a program in Spanish community-based learning. And it's, now we're really at 10.5 years, right? But it's just amazing to see the accumulation of what's been possible in that time, in large part due to Rachel's leadership, but also the openness of all the folks in Romance Languages, from your leadership to all the instructors at various levels, jumping in and doing what they do, taking that leap that Elena described so well of translating their teaching into a new way of teaching and thinking about how that wasn't just, undoing, but a redoing and a rethinking of an expression of what they've been teaching for so long. And it's just really lovely to see that grow, not just from, teaching experiences, but into research experiences, and to keep students involved in that throughout, and to grow the partnerships in the local community, to start with some and to have really expanded over time and deepened, of course, within those partnerships. So this is just really exciting for me to, I've gotten to follow it all along, but, it's really lovely to see, see you bring it together in this. So thanks so much for taking time to do that. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Connie. And adding to that, Kevin, you're here. Thank you so much. Katie, you're here as well. Deborah as a community partner. So all of those different partnerships, both internal with Notre Dame. I mean, the Canham Center has been so helpful and supportive in terms of the work with Elena, with the reading groups. One of the groups that we had was on social justice reading. Oh, looks like Kevin has his hand raised. Do you want to go ahead and say something, Kevin?
I really appreciated hearing about what you discovered as impacts by the analysis of the interviews. Thanks, Amber, for that summary of that information. And it made me think about some other studies that I've read. And I think, an opportunity for some further research would be to look at, there are some instruments that you can use to measure self-efficacy and sense of belonging, which are both really important predictors of student persistence, which is one of, performance is one problem. Do you get a good enough grade? But also persistence is another problem. Students graduating from high school, students getting through college, all those things. And so it would be really interesting to see if these experiences have an impact on those measures as well. So I just like make suggestions that create other people work and then step away. So that's good for me.
And Kevin, I'll chime in, and thank you for letting my 2-year-old who's ready for a nap join us. But I'll just speak on behalf of the Institute for Educational Initiatives and our immersion program. These partnerships benefit everyone. And we have been so happy at Holy Cross to have our students. I would be interested just in, as this work continues, Rachel, a few years from now, what are these graduates doing? Can we trace anything back? Have they stayed in any of these professions? I mean, I'm sure you're looking at all those pieces, but I'd be interested on our end, maybe who's in education or who continues to use Spanish in some way.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, some of Amber mentioned that we've done some student interviews already, and we're going to be kind of re-gearing up in the spring with our current student researchers, Cynthia Trujillo and Christina Ruiz, continuing with student interviews. And we want to reach back to some of those earlier graduates as far as what they're doing. But we know, for example, you're very involved with ACE. We've had multiple students who've done Spanish CBL who've gone through the ACE program. And I've got a couple more letters of rec for ACE that I got an extension to through Sunday that I will get in, before you do the interviews next week. But so yes, and all of us, Maria, Andrea, Tatiana, Maricel, Ellen, and I, we could all give examples of students who've shifted course in terms of career, thinking going into immigration law or going into education or other things because of the discernment that Elena referred to, that the students do as part of the process.